Last time we took a look at NMEMIC's debut record, Mechanical Spin Phenomenon. This time we're going to be looking at the follow-up record, The Audio Injected Soul, and we're going to put it under the microscope to see how it stacks up.
Released in 2004, The Audio Injected Soul took a major leap away from the style that we heard NMEMIC nail into concrete from their debut album. Where Mechanical Spin Phenomena was a pre-gent progressive industrial metal nightmare of awesome, Audio Injected opted for a more straightforward melodic metal approach, making it perhaps one of the most accessible albums in their entire discography. Odd time signatures still abound, but they're written in the constraints of a much more mainstream format. The album starts off with an eerie intro, sounding literally like doctors drilling into your skull. This track shows off a very interesting miking technique called AM3D.
AM3D is a microphone technique that's based around the idea of creating a three-dimensional field of sound around two-dimensional stereo headphones. This technique was not only developed by this band, but it's used twice on this record. The idea is that by putting headphones on either side of your head, you can create an effect that sounds like sound is being placed all around you. Like, instead of what you'd hear in headphones, which is just left and right, it's what you'd hear with your actual ears. For example, if someone were to snap their fingers around your head, you can tell roughly the direction that it's coming from, because as your brain downloads the sound from your ears to your brain, it translates the information that way. But when you hear it through headphones, it's just left and right. This album was the first album, and as far as I understand, as far as I know, the only album to ever utilize this very interesting technology.
This track is immediately cut into by the first real track of the album, Dream State Emergency. That's a fucking phenomenal name for a metal track, in my opinion. Harking back to the debut's many comparisons to their brother act, industrial metal pioneers, Fear Factory, this song's starting riff sounds very similar to that of Demanufacture, off of Fear Factory's 1995 album of the same name. This song is a fucking pounder, and my personal favorite off the record. It's a very good all-around display of what NMEMIC were going for with Audio Injected Soul. Moving away from crazy timing signatures, most riffs in this song and album follow and chug right in step with the drums during each double kick blast, something which would make Dino Cazares one proud metal Mexican upon hearing this album. From the get-go, Michael's voice is in top form, and throughout Audio Injected, he shows off more of his clean vocal range than he did on NMEMIC's debut. Track 3 of the album, Door 2.12, is a song that Soilwork fans will really love. With a main riff very reminiscent of Natural Born Chaos era Soilwork, the song takes hold as one of the most melodic and straightforward tracks that Audio Injected has to offer. The song is apparently about how singer Michael once worked in a morgue, plus 10 metal points right there, buddy, and there was a room number Door 2.12 that no one was allowed to enter. He always wondered what was up with that. I gotta say, this dude has a knack for making some kick-ass songs out of totally obscure subject matter. Both this track and the track Deathbox were released as singles from this record, and both spawned music videos that you can check out by looking at the links in the description box below. Track 4, Illuminate, isn't really a super memorable track in my opinion. It starts off as fierce as a Super Saiyan Big Bang attack to the face, but it doesn't ramp off that intensity, albeit for just a moment in the bridge. Now in metal, this isn't always a bad thing, but as long as you do it correctly. Sometimes it's just too much, and that's a little bit of the problem I have with this track. The song's about addiction problems and chemical dependency, so in one sense the frenetic pace does work in its favor, but other than that, to me, and probably to a lot of other listeners, it just is too ear-bleeding and just drags. After Illuminate, we wind up at Deathbox, perhaps the most well-known song of this band. This song is not only the main single off the album, it's also the second track to use the AM3D technology. On Deathbox, the guitar tracking at certain points pans all over the place around the listener, and on the second verse, Michael's vocals are panned in a way that sounds like they're actually getting pulled through your head. I have no other way to explain how this sounds. This track is best listened to in good headphones for the full effect of this. This is a totally awesome usage of this technology, and really, I kind of want to see more bands utilize this in the future, because for this type of metal, it just works in a really, really awesome way. Following Deathbox is Sane vs. Normal, the first track on this album to return to bizarre timing signatures and polyrhythmic drum parts. Now, personally, I like this track, but most other people might find it pretty boring. The song chugs along in and out of rhythm with the drums, using the same riff until the chorus parts, which for whatever reason reminded me of old Slipknot. And that has probably something to do with the insane dissonant lead guitar sound over the others in the track. This track is about murder, death, and other death metal subject matter. So you probably don't want to listen to this around the kids or around the family. So if you're listening to this album in the car around your kids, don't be an asshole. Don't play this track in front of them. Track number 7 is called Jack Vegas. Why? I have no idea. I don't know who the fuck Jack Vegas is. Maybe it's a drink? I don't know. At any rate, this is another track where the album may slow down for a minute to listeners. It's got an interesting chorus, but it's not really a memorable track. It just seems like filler that was thrown in to get enough tracks for a full release. The track that follows is anything but forgettable, however. Mindsaver is really one of the best tracks on the album. Along with Dream State Emergency, it epitomizes what NMNEMIC were clearly going for with this release. It's a highly melodic song, but that's a major strength. The song starts with a simple but seriously powerful riff and just continues forth in a very kick-ass manner and does not let up from the intensity one bit. Mindsaver shows off each of the band members' individual strengths as musicians, from guitar, bass, to drums and vocals. You can hear the skill these guys have honed over the years in this track, all culminating into a very awesome array of sound. Many people might find this to be their favorite track out of this release. Overdose in the Hall of Fame is another point where the album picks up again. Starting off with a very heavy synth and sample-laden intro, we're decimated by a crushing guitar riff reminiscent of Default Judgment by Fear Factory. This track is a very keyboard-layered track, and I really like that because it's one central element that's underused on this release compared to Mechanical Spin Phenomena. Those help to create the deep atmosphere the debut release was drenched in. Without as much of it this time around, Audio Injected just ended up sounding very sterile and almost too clean. This might have been part of the sound they were going for, but to compare Audio Injected to Mechanical Spin, it just sounds much emptier this time around. Speaking of Mechanical Spin Phenomena, the next track, The Silver Drop, is perhaps the closest thing to an MSP-style track Audio Injected has to offer. The rapid changing chords and timing signatures make a return, layers of keys and effects, as well as effects on Michael's voice make a return, and so does their pre-gent guitar styling. I don't think it'd be incorrect in thinking this song was written about the same time most other tracks from Mechanical Spin Phenomena were being written, since there's so many similarities in style. I really like this track, even though it's pretty overlooked by many NMNEMIC fans. The album finishes off on a cover of Wild Boys by Duran Duran. Now, I'm a huge 80s music fan, and I love Duran Duran, so hearing a great metal cover of an 80s song I like is pretty fucking awesome. This cover is handled very well, and is kept within the style of the album. Spooky and futuristic, heavy with non-stop intensity, I would easily put this on a top 10 list of metal covers of other bands' tracks.
All in all, the Audio Injected Soul is a great metal record on its own, but it doesn't compare to their debut album much at all. It falls flat for a few reasons. One reason is, there's not a lot of keyboard and sample ambience this time around, except for one track, really. That's not cool. What made the first album great is what the second album is missing. It's also very clear that this album was meant to appeal to the larger metal market as opposed to just fans of progressive and industrial metal. Because of those reasons, I'm giving this a 7.0 out of 10, but I do definitely recommend that you check out The Audio Injected Soul by NMNEMIC. This isn't The Audio Injected Soul. This is Infestessimum by Ghost. And this is a very cheap editing gag to cock-tease you with a review that I'm going to do in the very near future. Anyway, I'm some guy on the internet, so are you. Rock the fuck on.